Welcome to Riomax. My name is Trevor Greenfield. I'm the founder and owner. And today I have the honor of welcoming a guest speaker, Jerry Doan. Jerry, good to have you.
Hey, good morning, Trevor. Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Well, I live out here in just off the Missouri River in southern North Dakota with my family. Our operation, Black Leg Ranch, was started in 1882 when my great-grandfather came down out of Canada and homesteaded in what was then Dakota Territory. So we've got a lot of pride and heritage in the cattle industry and agriculture. And, you know, the tough times we're going through, I don't know as we have much I don't think it's anything close to what it was like homesteading on the northern Great Plains and the blizzards, and they lived in a sod house and trying to keep food on the table and keep warm. So I think sometimes we have to think back and keep it into perspective, and not that the times we're going through aren't an issue as well, but
that's good. That's a good point, Jerry. So how many generations back is this?
Well, that would have been, I'm the fourth generation.
Okay.
Okay. You know, and I'm a little, my wife Renee and I operate the ranch, but I have four kids, and all of them went off to college across the United States, worked somewhere, and they've all come back to North Dakota. And the three boys are all involved here on the ranch. And so that creates some real excitement having them back, but some challenges of how do you fit the next generation in, and how do you make it work. And so we've branched off into some other entities, and we embrace regenerative agriculture and do things completely different than we did when I was younger. And it's brought our profitability back, and it's also, we're trying to constantly improve our quality of life, because we need to have fun in business, and sometimes I think we miss that as well. So
that's a powerful point you make. First of all, to look at the current crisis we're in the context of what some of the previous generations have been through, and then secondly, to look at how to have fun and doing what we're doing. And you've clearly been a success story in bringing the next generation into it, which I think is a breath of fresh air, a breath of energy. Now you talk about regenerative agriculture, and I had somebody say to me once, you know, the difference between sustainable and regenerative, you know, you could almost refer to it as a marriage. You know, if you ask somebody how their marriage is and they say, yeah, it's sustainable, it doesn't sound real bright, does it? But if you ask them how their marriage is and they say it's regenerative, it kind of gives you that ongoing sustainability and improvement, doesn't it? So I like where you're going with that. And I think you're doing a lot with the soil health and grass-fed beef and all of that. But I think more important than that, Jerry, is what you're doing with your family. And you see that regenerative spirit in bringing your family back.
Well, and you know this, Trevor, I don't particularly care for the word sustainability and sustaining. I think it's been so overused, and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. We got to be part of the sustainability movement. And we're even seeing that some now with regenerative. You know, we'll have to come up with a new word again, I suppose. But, you know, my point in that is, why would I want to sustain something that is degraded? And in the case of our rangelands, they've been degraded. And I don't mean any disrespect to the other generations that came before us, but we've learned, you know, what made the grasslands so abundant and productive was the massive herds of buffalo that roamed the Great Plains before we came around, and they came through and they almost annihilated the land, but then they didn't come back for a year or two or three, and
Sure.
you had abundant grassland. If you read Lewis and Clark's journals, the grass was saddle high and abundant and beautiful. And so what we're doing now with regenerative agriculture, we don't have those massive herds, and so we have to do it with fencing. I mean, you could do it with herding, but you know, that's a bit of a challenge, but it can be done. I don't want to ever discount that, but we do it with fencing, and that way you bring higher animal impact, very high animal impact, short duration, planned rotational grazing, and then long rest and recovery periods. And we've seen how that's vastly improved the soil health in our native rangeland, brought the productivity back, widened the species again. By season-long grazing, you narrow those species. Now we have big blue stem climbing up the sandy hill slopes that we never saw. And it's fun and it's exciting and it's fun to see. And then you take that the next step and brings profitability back. And then hopefully in the long term, your quality of life improves.
Right, right. Well, I think you said once that you said the way you can tell that this agricultural system that we've got today is broke is the fact that the young people are not coming back. And I love to see operations like yours where you defying the odds, you defying the trend. And we as a company are a little bit like that too, in the fact that we're always about defying status quo. I think status quo is a dangerous and a toxic element really to regeneration. So with that said, Jerry, you know, you're a nice enough guy, but boy, you have given me a tough time. And I'm here to say it on camera now so everyone can share with me and maybe sympathize with me a little bit. But Jerry, in thinking about it, I think you've done us a world of good by all of your questions and challenges. And I wanted to try harvest some of those challenges and put it on camera so that other folks that may have the same questions can benefit from it. So can you start letting loose with a barrage of questions?
Well, Trevor, you know, I mean, we're a holistic managed operation. We really try to keep our costs down and do things different. You know, in agriculture, we're so traditional, and when you start to do things different, people, it's a tough world out there. People are critical because when you go against the grain, and you understand that in business as well, people don't like it when you step out a bit and do things different. And so, having said that, we challenge ourselves all the time, and you know, we're constantly looking for what's the right way to do this. You know, we've changed our calving dates. We've changed the type of cattle we have in bringing our cow size down. We're trying to. Our goal is to never feed a bale of hay in the northern plains. That doesn't always work. We always have to have a backup plan. We know Mother Nature can be brutal here. So as you go through all that, then where do minerals fit into the system? And is it possible to do it without adding anything? I mean, in a perfect world, we would say that. We would say, oh, we get it all from what we grow. But we also know that there are times and issues that we're probably short on. And so as I've used many different kinds of minerals and many different kinds of systems, constantly looking for the right answer. And when I stumbled onto your products, I'm intrigued by what you've done, but yet I'm constantly challenging you, as you well know, and you said it, you know, why do you have in there what's in there and what makes it better? And the initial shock of it is they're higher priced. Right. In, you know, the initial, as I looked at my computer program on my expenses, and all of a sudden, boom, I've got this bigger cost for mineral tubs, and I'm like, wow, is it really paying? And that's why I'm constantly challenging you and Riomax.
Yes.
Why do you put in there what's in there? And you've told me there's 19 different ingredients that are trying to squeeze every little bit we can out of our forage.
Just do that again. That was great.
Squeeze.
If you're ever looking for a job, Jerry.
and so, you know, is that worth it or not? And you and I went back and forth, and you know, I understand what you're saying, and I'm getting better at feeling better about it, but I'm going to constantly challenge, you know, why 19? Why not 6? And you've told me you started at 6 and then went to, I think 16 or something like that, and found other things that should be in there. And it's the question all of us cattlemen are going to ask. I think
Yes.
one of the poorest known, I've got a degree in animal science from North Dakota State. You know, I think I fairly knowledgeable in the cattle industry and things, but quite honestly, when I even go to experts and talk about minerals, I think there's very little knowledge on it. You know, if I brought 4 or 5 feed tags to the industry folks, and I don't mean any discredit by this, because there's folks that are way smarter on this than I am, but to actually say which one of these is better, well, there's so many gray areas in there, and because I've done that and come home more confused than I was before. And so well, we're looking for what really works. That's why I'm challenging you, and that's where we're at.
I appreciate it, because I think the challenges that we've got from you and many other ranchers is it's helping us shape our company to be, rather than just peddling product, Jerry, we need to be educators, we need to be teachers, we need to be helping people make good, informed decisions. Now, whether that decision is for Riomax or whether that decision is for brand X is kind of by the way, because people will do what's best for them at the end of the day. And so I want to thank you for sort of putting us to the challenge there. Now, just to take that discussion we've been having, you've got the mineral side and you got the digestion side. So this is Escort trace minerals, 100% rumen bypass trace minerals, and this is the digestion package, which is the 19 components. So I'm just going to separate those. Let's first of all talk to the point of the mineral. So we say we have 100% rumen bypass trace mineral, or 100% protected trace mineral. And we say it all day long. I mean, probably hundreds of times a week. And I think a challenge from you kind of stopped us in our tracks and said, wait a minute, let's give a bit of context to this. We started with zero protected mineral. We just had sulfates and oxides like everybody else does. Now, sulfates and oxides are a very low digestibility. Their ability to be absorbed into the bloodstream is extremely low. Plus, they have a negative impact on rumen bacteria. The good bugs in the rumen, those sulfates and oxides will have a negative impact. And there's university studies to prove that. And then furthermore, those El Cheapo minerals, sulfates and oxides, will have a negative impact on the soil bacteria. So now we've taken it right through. And so way back when, we had no protected trace minerals. Then we stepped up our game and started focusing on conception rates, and we upped that level from 0 to 33% protected trace mineral. And at that point, we were the highest inclusion rate in the industry. I shared with you, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's other companies running a 25% protected trace mineral, and the balance is the El Cheapo. We've got guys that run 12.5% and still call their mineral a chelate, And in actual fact, you know, they've got almost 90% of that mineral is sulfates and oxides. So that at that point we were at a 33%. And then we saw that the studies that Dr. Spears has done, that's S-P-E-E-R-S, Dr. Spears, from the Carolinas, and he showed that sulfates and oxides had a negative impact on rumen bacteria. We say feed the troops that win the war. The very troops, the very good bugs in the rumen that are doing all your digestive work, breaking down your forages, this El Cheapo mineral, now this is like an aha moment. This El Cheapo mineral is hurting the performance of our troops. That's like saying, let's in the coronavirus, COVID-19, let's start feeding all the doctors and nurses on the front line of this crisis. Let's start cheapening up what we're feeding them. And suddenly we start killing off doctors and nurses when we need them most. Okay, so this was an aha moment for us. And at that point, Dwayne and I, Dwayne is my brother-in-law and partner in this business, we said, that's it. We are going from 33% to 100% rumen bypass trace minerals or protected trace minerals. So you can see the trend there. Now, why did we go to 100% rumen bypass trace minerals? Well, because you can't get no more. It's giving that copper, zinc, manganese, selenium the highest chance of success. It's giving it the highest chance of getting into the bloodstream. So that's the mineral side. Now let's talk real briefly to the digestion side. You said to me, Trevor, why do you have 19 digestion components? Why not 25? Why not 15? Like, did you just pick that number because it was cool? Like that is what you said to me. And boy, I felt beat up. Boy, did I ever felt like I was under the gun. So the only way I could explain it to you, as I will do on camera now, is let me tell you where we started. We started with one enzyme, one digestion tool known as Aspergillus oryzae. It's been around since the 70s. It has a brand name of Amifirm, and some people will recognize that. Great product, been around forever. And so we started with one component. And then we gradually built up from there. One of our core values at Rio Nutrition is embrace continuous improvement. Another way of saying challenge the status quo every day. So gradually it went up, and we kept adding more ingredients, more tools, you might say, to our toolbox, so that we could cut a wider and wider and wider swath in terms of digestion, in terms of, like you said, squeezing more out of every mouthful. And then we got to 16. And for years, we had 16 digestion components in the United States. Canadian numbers are slightly different just because of the regulations. But in the United States, we had 16 digestion components. I could say it in my sleep. Well, as of January of 2019, so relatively recently, we added 3 more. And so now we're at 19. So 19 is not a magic number. It's just where we've got to today with yeasts, enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics, and fungi fuel. So things that feed the good bugs, things that feed the fungi, the troops, feeding the troops that win the war. I can't put it any more simply than that. Feeding the doctors and nurses that are on the front lines of fighting coronavirus, just to put it in a current light. So I don't know if that, you probably have more questions, Jerry. Appreciate it if you.
Well, I think you've done a good job of explaining. I guess a couple of points I would make. I think on the chelated minerals, we're really big in soil health here. And anything that's going to help the biology in the soil, because we test our biology in the soil. We've got one of the highest tests ever recorded to date in North Dakota for soil biology. And so we're big into that. So we want things that help that along, not hinder it. And you've made the point on sulfates and oxides and the problems they cause. I've always been a firm believer, and part of our problem in the cattle industry, you know this well, let's throw some mineral out there we don't really understand and we don't know what to do, but it's a feel good thing. And we'll put it out there. And yeah, it didn't cost us a lot, but if it cost us anything and we got no value for it, it was a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been down that path. I'm a firm believer that chelated minerals are the way to go. You have proven that to me, that they really go into the bloodstream and do their job. So I think that makes sense. Like I said, we're big into soil biology. I'm convinced that's right. The other side of this, and I've used some of the other products that have had Amifirm in, so I already was a believer in that made sense. Now you've added a whole host of other things that help support that, or maybe are even better than that alone. But anyway, as a whole 19 package, support that whole function. Now, anytime we can, it's hard for us in the beef business, and this is why I always challenge you. It's hard. A dairy producer can, check the milk tank right away. The milk tank's full. This is paying its weight. But when you're grazing, and we're grazing cover crops all winter, maybe adding some supplemental hay in when we have 30 degrees below zero here in North Dakota. But it's really hard to measure that. So yeah, maybe we're getting a benefit. So then you've really got to go back to what's the body condition on the cows? How do they look? And then ultimately, and you've alluded to the reproduction and how many bred females are in the herd. So, I think this thing makes a lot of sense. And you've heard me say this, and I'm convinced of this. If we can get the rumen health right, and then we get the soil health right, and eventually then we get the human health right. I'm a firm believer in that we're starting to connect the dots of soil health and human health. And once we connect those, and the consumer is going to be the one that demands this, and agriculture always thinks we're smarter than the consumer. And sometimes it's perception, unfortunately, but I'm a firm believer that perception becomes a reality, whether we like it or not. And the consumer ultimately is in charge. And so I do believe we are going to connect human health with soil health. We're seeing that already. And the other part of that you're fitting into is getting that rumen health right, which then helps us. And as we build the soil health right, our forage health goes up. And then we've made the complete circle. So I'm kind of excited about that, of where that goes. Now, it's gray in a lot of those areas, but I think you're on track to try to make that all work. And obviously that's why we're trying to fit into this puzzle. We're constantly going to challenge you and your company to make sure that those dollars we spend are spent wisely.
Yes.
But we're constantly searching to, again, get back to our holistic goals, which include multi-generational, bringing that next generation back, making this ranch in better shape than when I got it, and then bringing profitability back and quality of life back, which are, in my opinion, the two major goals that most of the time get missed in agriculture. And why is that? It's because we have learned to accept that we just can't make money, and then we accept that we really don't enjoy this anymore, but we'll keep doing it because that's what mainstream agriculture does.
Right. And Jerry, I appreciate what you say as to challenging whether every dollar you spend, let's say on Riomax, but on anything really in your monthly expenditure on a ranch or annual expenditure, is it actually paying its way?
Right.
I think that is a very wholesome challenge. I mean, let's face it, right now we're in tough times, and we don't know, I think personally, long after COVID-19 is over, the economy is going to be feeling the pain of the repercussions. So we don't know where this is going, but what we do know is, if, like, you've got those 4 goals, is it 4?
Well, yeah, there's a couple more, but that's 14 goals that we have. Absolutely.
I think that's fantastic, Jerry. We did a recent video on how to navigate, helping ranchers navigate their way through COVID-19. But I think this is a bigger subject you're talking to, is helping ranchers navigate their way through, really through life, and make sure that it's regenerative, and you're setting up the next generation. Just going back to, there's a myth out there that if you use cheap mineral, you are saving yourself money. What's in cheap mineral that I'm a little bit passionate against is all the unseen negatives that are never published, besides what Dr. Spears published. So the unseen negatives are, you with a sulfate or an oxide, you're having a negative effect on the troops that are trying to win the war, your bugs in the room, and you're having a negative effect on the soil, the soil biology. Okay, now look at the movement of antibiotics in our industry today, right? The movement has been no antibiotics, right? Antibiotic means anti-life. So I think we need to name things for what they are. I'm not against antibiotics used strategically as and when needed, but not overused. Same for sulfates and oxides. If we called them for what they were, if we called them anti-life minerals, people would start seeing them in a different light. And I'm not trying to knock any other mineral company. I'm not saying we're good and they're bad. But what I referred to earlier is, we've got to be teachers. We've got to be educators. We've got to get alongside ranchers, shoulder to shoulder, and help them understand the reality of this thing. And you talk full circle. You've got soil health, forage health, animal health, human health. It's all tied together. It's one ecosystem. And I'm sure we could have a webinar like this, Jerry, on soil health for an hour, and we might have to save that for a different time.
Right. Well, I do believe, Trevor, as we learn about soil health, and we've never been that concerned about it before. It was our production model in mainstream agriculture was pour the coals to her, maximum yield. And that worked for a long, long time. But again, as the consumer's becoming more concerned with some of that, and we've used up that benefit, so you have to continue to pour more and more coals to it. So anything we do to help that biology along, and I can show you in our own fields what a huge difference it's made when we get that biology right. All of a sudden the fungi are back, the bacteria are back, the worms are back, the pores in the soil are back, our infiltration goes up, our evaporation goes down, and we don't need all those inputs. And it's not a perfect world, so I'm not saying you can take everything out, but that is obviously the goal. But all of a sudden, then your animal health starts to improve. And ultimately, and that's what we're all concerned about, and it's on all of our minds now with the virus running around, it's improving human health. And not that that fixes everything, but to have a good immune system, we know
Sure.
is important through the course of
Sure.
this. So having a good immune system in that cow, and then having a good immune system in us as human beings on this earth are
Yes.
important things. And
Sure it is.
and you know, it's like all these things that come around, some good comes out of it all. It probably will bring some of that to the more to our attention, and hopefully we can move down this path. So
Yes. Yes. Well, Jerry, I was just going to tell a little story quick here to wrap up. Getting back to soil health, you know, I've spent more time at home in the last 2 weeks than I have for a long time, and as you say, I think there's definitely a positive side to this. But I was spending time with my boys. One is 6 and one is 8, and we're down in the woods behind our house. And you know, there's a thick layer of leaves and then organic matter under that and trees. And I thought, well, let me teach them a little bit about soil. Not that I'm a soil expert by any stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to dig. And so you have the leaves, and then you have the semi-decomposed leaves, and then you have a layer of organic matter, and then you dig into the soil. And what the soil looks like at that point is like cottage cheese, like
Mm-hmm.
black cottage cheese. And I was showing my boys how you can just tell. You don't have to be an expert. You can tell that with all those little clumps, that the moisture absorbent capacity of that soil is way up compared to a lifeless soil that's just a bunch of grains, you know. And you can squish it together in your hand, and then you can it just be there in a ball, and then you just poke it like this, and it all falls apart again. I mean, you can just tell soil health is at the base of this whole ecosystem, and yet so overlooked.
No, absolutely. Well, you were in a very good soil, it sounds like to me, and it was a good teaching moment. I'm proud of you.
Well, I'm no teacher, but I think the soil was teaching me something,
Yeah.
Jerry. And well, to wrap this up, I want to really thank you for your time, Jerry. I think probably the hardest part about doing these virtual meetings, if you like, is getting all the gear figured out, and the virtual technology, and all this gizmo. But I would say, you know, I think it's made us, maybe it's made a man out of me trying to figure this all out. Because I do want to say, you know, we have felt as a company, face-to-face contact is critical. We always have, you know, face-to-face contact, especially with the rancher. And right now we're kind of hurting because we can't do that. And
Right.
as you know, we used to have a monthly rancher round table where we brought people here, thought leaders, industry leaders, progressive ranchers, and now we're forced to look at changing that for the time being and doing it virtually. So what a learning curve, huh? But I think it goes back to we've got to keep evolving. We've got to keep adjusting as life throws these curveballs at us, and those will be the businesses that thrive and survive.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's none of us really having fun. This whole thing has affected lots and lots of folks in lots and lots of different ways that some we can't even imagine, but we all hear little bits and pieces. And
Yeah.
And personally, we've all had some effect, some worse than others. And but we've got to, you said it, and we know this, we got to keep it into perspective. I mean, I'm pretty inept on technology, but I'm kind of proud of myself. I actually got this to work so I could see your smiling face and have a little fun with it here this morning. So.
Yeah. Jerry, just one more thing. I think you guys are a family that has showcased the ability to think outside of the box even before this whole crisis. Can you just touch a little bit on the ranch and then the multiple entities that you have on the ranch? I think that's kind of cool.
Well, it's a testament to my boys. You know, we have a lot of fun, there's a lot of excitement here, but we are a family. It's challenging at times, families are all challenging, and you would know this, you're involved with family and business, but when the boys came back, we kind of said, what are you going to bring to the table? We can't do it all on the backs of the cows. And so we operate Rolling Plains Adventures, which is a full-fledged hunting outfitting business. Been on most of the national hunting shows. Been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but pheasant hunting, waterfowl hunting, deer hunting, even some coyote hunting, and now buffalo hunts as well. And so meet a lot of great people. You have a lot of fun, and it offers some income to us. And we love wildlife, and with our whole soil health management, we've propagated the wildlife, which is good if you hunt them or not. Then kind of an offshoot of that, when Jay, my middle son, came back, we got into agritourism, and the main goal in that was to spread a positive image about agriculture, because and we've had people here from all 50 states and 40 foreign countries, and quite honestly, wow, the perception of agriculture is not all that good from a lot of folks in big cities, and I know that because they tell us. And yet when they come here, spend some time on the ranch, either through a corporate event, a soil health tour, a grazing tour, we do Western weddings, we do all sorts of different events, and we always try to fit in. How do we talk about agriculture and show them our conservation practices? And when they leave, they always say, wow, you guys care about regenerating your natural resources. You care about how you take care of your livestock. You care about the water and the air, and you care about putting a good, wholesome, healthy food product on the table. And so we hope that then they go back and help spread that word. And
sure.
And then Jay also worked for Anheuser-Busch before he came back, and he's had the dream of doing a microbrewery on the ranch. So in the back of we've got the Copper Jewel barn. It's our event. It's an old barn. We can seat 300-400 people in there, and we have a brewery in there now. And so it's been a new venture for us, and the virus caught us right in our major kickoff, and spent a lot of money on promotion and had to cancel a lot of things. So, it's one of those things. And then our newest venture is my youngest son that went to Montana State. Jace came back, and we've delved into grass finished beef and bison, and we have our own label, and we're learning as we go, but it's a good, healthy product, and because we're doing it on grass, it's good for the environment. We're one of the few Audubon certified ranchers, because it says that we're helping the meadowlark, which is depleting, and many hundreds of other birds, and we're helping to bring those all back, and through our conservation. But in the process, then we're offering a good, healthy food product on the table for folks. So those are our main entities, and along with a cow herd and yearlings and all the things that go along with running a cow operation, and we still do some crop farming as well. So
that's a wonderful story, Jerry, and I think it should be an inspiration to other ranching families out there that just have the goal or the foresight to include the next generation, and then think out of the box. Like, I'm not here to preach that the only way to go is grass finished beef, because obviously a lot of our customers are traditional. Yeah. But what I am here to preach is thinking outside of the box, because there's a lot of value added programs, whether it's NHTC or GAP4 or whether it's grass fed or organic or whatever you want to do. Think outside of the box. And then I think we need to be inspired by you. You got the hunting, you got the events, you got the brewery. I mean, it's just, I think too many of us live with our blinders on, and we don't think big picture like you've done. So that's great. And then one more thing I wanted to say, I had heard so much about your beef. Finally, I had to just, you got me, got your hand around my neck like this, and I finally agreed to buy some. Well, I cooked it on the grill. Now, I'm not here to knock grass-fed beef, but one other time we bought grass-fed beef for our family, and I didn't mind it. It was quite strong tasting, but you know what? The kids didn't like it. And we've talked so much about the next generation here in this meeting right now. It kind of bothered me that kids don't like it. Well, when we got some of your beef, and I cooked it myself on the grill and then sliced it up, and the family just loved it. It was very lean and very flavorful, and yet it didn't have that, you know, that grassy taste that's almost too overwhelming. So it passed the test. The kids like it. I like it. The fat is healthy.
Glad to hear.
You say the fat is healthy. I mean, what else does a guy want?
Well, I appreciate that, Trevor. You know, the one thing I think we've got to be careful in agriculture. I never run somebody else down if
No.
they've got blue cows, pink cows, big cows, little cows. If they're feeding corn and I'm feeding grass or whatever they are, I think there's room for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're very diverse, and we have a diverse agriculture, and you find your niche, you find the consumers that like what you're doing, and you run with it. And
yes.
I think it serves none of us when we run one down and it confuses the consumer. And you know that even in the feed business and the tub business and that sort of thing, you go with a positive image, tell them the benefits, and run with that. And you know, you mentioned something, and I'd like to make a point on this. I'm getting quite a few people calling me. You know, people are worried and concerned, and rightfully so. But I've been across the country speaking on this sort of thing, and then people call me, and it's because they're looking, what can we do different? The old model isn't working. We're struggling. And, you know, it's hard, and multi-generational places struggle because dad won't move over. And it's not always dad, but somebody won't move to try new ideas. And that's not easy. It wasn't easy for me. It's not easy for the next guy. And like I said, we're so traditional, and particularly when you're multi-generational, we'll do it the way great-granddad did, grandpa did, dad did. But I would encourage people, and I always, you know, what I do here doesn't necessarily work everywhere, but the principles are the same. You have to adapt them, north, south, east, west. But to think outside a little bit or come up with new ideas. The model we're in agriculture right now is a struggling model in a lot of cases. I'm by no means an expert. We've done our share of problems, but looking at things in a different way and adapting, particularly soil health practices, is going to get us there in the long run, in my opinion, because when the consumer demands this, if we're not going to offer it, and I've been told this by many people out of big cities that have visited the ranch, we don't care where we buy our beef if it has to come from Brazil or Timbuktu, but we will. You know, they're not loyal like they once were, unfortunately. So anyway,
so we as an industry really need to pay close attention to the market signals. You know, you talk about grass-fed beef or antibiotic-free food.
right.
I mean, just look at that trend over the last 10 years. I think we as an industry need to really, really pay attention to market signals and then react to that. So
Absolutely. Well, and my kids' generation, they're the ones, and we went down the natural path. You know, we're antibiotic free. We're using no growth hormones, completely grass raised, and this the consumers that we're dealing with, that's what they want. They want to have a connection with the rancher and then feel good about what they're doing, that they are taking care of the natural resources, that they are conservation minded, and then that they are putting a good wholesome product on the table. Now, always be consumers that want to go to Walmart or wherever it is, buy the cheapest thing, just like the folks that you deal with that want to go buy the cheapest lick tub out there, because that's just the way the world is. And there's room for all of us. And absolutely. I won't ever criticize one or the other, but we're offering a niche that we think has got a real place. And we're seeing that by the growth trends in the industry, that this trend is moving in that direction. And I do think the whole health issue we're dealing with right now probably will push that even further a little bit. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, every cloud is a silver lining, and I think you've pointed that up to us. Jerry, just to wrap up here, can you tell us a little bit about any habits you've developed as far as not touching your face and all of that since COVID-19?
What was that again?
Can you?
You know how hard that is when somebody tells you not to touch your face. It's like you got 7 itches all in 3 places.
I've been grounded here for the last few weeks, and my last flight I took was to Dallas, Texas, and they said, the main thing is just don't touch your face. And I'm like, okay, that seems pretty doable. Well, on that flight, my face was just absolute. It felt like I had it broke out in a rash. I had itches and oh boy. No, I think we need to hang together. We need to pull together in this crisis and in this industry. And I think what you've shared with us today, Jerry, has been priceless. I appreciate you spending time with us, and I hope anybody that's watching this can glean something out of it. Not everything we've said is a fit for everybody. One size does not fit all, but like Jerry said, it's the principles. And I think those are very, very wholesome. So thank you, Jerry.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Just hope everybody, our thoughts and prayers with everybody through this thing. And we'll get there.
Yes, we'll get there. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.